She always believes that continuous learning is important in whichever field you work, and she is presently learning to achieve CS, CCSP, and CIPT certifications. At present, she leads the certification and attestation tower for APAC. In her free time, she used to enjoy in exploring her culinary skills and loved to spend time in gardening. To know more about the speaker, please visit her LinkedIn profile. Now I request Madam Soma Bhattamisra to over the session. Please, Madam.
Thank you so much, sir. First of all, good morning to everybody and a very happy new year to all of you. And I'm actually privileged that I got a chance to be part of the teachers. Teachers have a very important role in our lives because we are and hungry minds, students. So always we have to stay hungry to be knowledgeable, and learning is one thing, sharing it with others is even better. The more you share, the more you grow. So thanks for inviting me. Actually, I am very privileged that I got a chance because I love to interact with teachers and students. They really form the backbone. So without explaining further, I would like to actually delve on a topic which is everyday's matter today. Like everybody keeps on talking about cloud. Many times you would listen that I want to go to the cloud, I will use Amazon. Tomorrow I use Google Cloud. Our documents are there in OneDrive, right? So what exactly is this cloud about? So let me start sharing my presentation. Okay, so what exactly is cloud about? And we have so many definitions. You can just browse through the internet. We have research papers, we have white papers written on cloud. But my topic is about demystifying it. I just wanted to take this session, which will be a simpler version of why we need to understand cloud first. Like, why do we even have to use it, right? And why do we need to secure it? That is very important. So understanding is very important because it will help us whether we are a risk assessor, a learner, a user, why do we need to use such a thing? So for me, so many definitions when I saw it and when I discussed with multiple teachers, when I have spoken with the teams, everybody comes out with a very new definition, very interesting one. But the fundamental still stays the same. It's just a server connected to the internet. That's it. With huge amounts of compute, storage, and network available throughout. So the user experience doesn't have any latency. Anywhere you want, today you download it from Facebook at 12 a.m. in the night, or I want to study at 1 a.m. in the morning from the Dropbox, it is always available because you have huge amount of compute and storage and network associated. So it's a high-end machine connected to the internet, and it is very fast rather than a traditional IT. So
Ma'am,
cloud
sorry for
refers
the
to
interrupt.
servers accessed over the internet.
Sorry
Yeah,
for the
yes, sir.
interrupt,
Sorry.
ma'am. Voice is getting break. Shall I mute your video? It will be better for to broadcasting. Yeah,
Yes.
ma'am.
Is it
Yeah,
audible, sir?
yeah. Now correct, ma'am. You can proceed, ma'am.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
So I would like to start with taking a very important definition of cloud, which is actually the most used definition today because it is provided by National Institute of Standards and Technology. But to understand the underlining factor that what is cloud, if I have a physical server which I'm using today in my office, then what is the difference between using that and using a cloud data center? Because the data center is provided by a cloud service provider, so I don't pay the money. I only use the service and I get paid for what I'm doing, right? So always the understanding and the concept has to be very clear. So whichever perspective we see tomorrow, when we use a cloud service, either it is for a business purpose or it is for a personal use, we will always be able to understand the security considerations and the risk which may be there. So I would start with this definition because it is very important to know what NIST states because it is a global chair and they have identified this definition as the most sorted definition for cloud. So they define it as a model for enabling ubiquitous, convenient, on-demand network access to a shared pool of configurable computing resource that can be rapidly provisioned and released with minimal intervention. So we will actually see this, how it is applying. But the idea of cloud actually didn't start now. It started in 1990s itself. The next slide will talk about the history of cloud over a short span. I have taken some keywords in the next slide, but this was predominantly a thought process that what exactly is a cloud. Everybody thinks cloud is something which it's very difficult, something which is there, but no, nothing. It is actually no rocket science. It's actually a huge amount of resource pooling, which you see in the right side, the network, the storage, and the compute, which is available in a broad scale. And yes, we will also see how it is rapidly provisioned. We will also understand why we are saying that it is not requiring intervention. Okay, for user intervention is minimal. We will understand that as we go through the slides. Okay, so this slide is on the cloud history. 1990s, the World Wide Web started, 91. There are evidences of cloud literature in 96 also. But in 97, one of the Indian professors who's based out of US, Ramnath Chellappa, he actually wrote cloud in one of his papers. That is where the term cloud caught attention. In 2002, Amazon Web Services, AWS today, it's one of the global cloud providers. Okay, so they started the inception of a concept called public cloud. Public means what? Which is available. Public general information, right? So available for the public. So cloud, which is designed for the public. They came with the idea that let us use this cloud as a platform to service the customers, right? So they brought that concept in. In 2005 to 2011, there were multiple changes. I have taken few. You would have a list of things which have happened. The core being Open Nebula. This has got a lot of attention in 2005. It was open source project. Similarly, EC2, Elastic Cloud Compute, right? Amazon gives this as a compute instance today. So they started this in 2006. And then something caught my attention, that was service level agreement with the cloud service provider, that is CSP. Why do we even need a service level agreement? So I will talk about this more when we get into the next slide. This is just to give an idea that cloud is actually thought about long back. It was there in some or the other set of the work sphere, but it caught actually attention from 2005 onwards, where we started developing. It became public cloud, then they came out with private clouds, then they thought on community clouds. Okay, they developed the models. And 2017 and beyond, today everything is hosted as a service. The cloud architecture itself has been designed so that it can be made available for the customers as a service. So if I want to host a database, I can give it to a company, a cloud provider, and I will give some storage space. I can call it as storage space as a service, because I'm offering it on rent to the customers to use that data, and they pay as on need basis. Whatever they use, they pay for that, right? So the concept of cloud basically is there. And the idea of showing this slide is to show you the history, basically. And SLA, when we talked about, it became very important. And in fact, today, having a service level agreement is the core requirement with any cloud service provider. We also need to see that whether the security requirements are actually there, because though they host the data for you, for which you do not pay money, but the data which you input is yours. You are the data owner. So we should know how secure the data should be. That is why the SLA concept started gaining a lot of attention, because of the thousands of breach you study every day in the newspapers, in Facebook, in any website you go today, you will see data loss, data breached for 211, $2,000 million. So all these things happen because of minimum. Even if you have the entire gamut of security, you would have missed out a small configuration somewhere, and that could have led to the data loss. Okay, so what exactly makes this cloud work? Can I make a physical server automatically work like a cloud system? No. We need to virtualize the underlying technology behind the cloud. Everything magic which happens is with the word virtualization. If you cannot virtualize, it cannot enable the cloud technology to function. So cloud computing is basically possible because of virtualization technology. And virtualize means copy. So you create copies of instances. So if you see the left hand side system, it is just a Windows box. We want to virtualize it. So we have installed something called a virtualization software, which you see it as a VMware on the right hand side, right? And when we virtualize, that software has the component or the tendency to create multiple instances. So something like you have one physical box, but you have multiple clients sitting, multiple operating system and application instances created. So in each of these instances, you can have one client configured. So maybe I can keep client A in one instance. I can keep client B in one instance. I can keep client C in the other. But in a traditional box, it doesn't happen. You have one box for one system. So think about the amount of storage space, the amount of cost, the amount of resources you would require if you have 50 customers, and all the 30 may be fitting into one server in the cloud data centers because of the high-end capacity, right? So the underlying technology, how does cloud actually function? It's because of virtualization. That is why you are able to see cloud. So the bare metal, the bare box is nothing but the host machine. And when you virtualize that and you create guest instances, those become the guest machines. Okay. This is just a snapshot. It is just to tell you the security problem here. Often we see that it depends, exactly depends upon the user. They have all rights to decide which hypervisor they want to use. Okay. So as I said, virtualization is a very core component. To virtualize, what you will need, a virtualization software. And that virtualization software is called as hypervisor. Hypervisor is actually the software that makes the virtualization possible. So we have two types today in the market. You can go for a type 1 hypervisor, you can go for a type 2 hypervisor. But there is a slight difference here. From a security perspective, people would always choose type 1 rather than type 2. The reason being the contact surface. See the type 1, there is a hardware box. We install the hypervisor, it automatically creates you instances. Okay, but if you take type 2, you take a hardware, the operating system is not embedded with the hypervisor. So you have to install the OS, then you install the hypervisor, then you get the instances. If the operating system has any vulnerability which has not been addressed, for example, OS hardening is not done. Hardening is nothing but removal of unnecessary services from your operating system, right? So if it is affected, what will happen? All your instances are gone because that is the underlying infection layer. You can't stop it. And imagine in cases where you have customers who have healthcare records, who have card data, who have personally identifiable information. What will you do in such cases? You cannot contain that infection. It is actually going to spread because it is a VMware, right? So preferably always people use type 1 for security reasons. For smaller businesses where they feel that there is no security concern generally, as per industry requirements, they go for a type 2 hypervisor. So these are the two types. While people choose, it is better to go for a type 1. And the reason I just explained, you reduce the contact area. That's it. That is why we go for this. Okay, before I go into this slide, I want to take an example here because that will be more interesting to understand, like why we have to understand so many advantages of cloud. If I have to start a company and we all decided, all of us decided that, okay, we will have a consulting firm. We go and what we will be searching first, we will need an office today, right? We want to go for an office which can be registered. Moment you go and talk to the landlord, he tells you whether you use it or you don't, 50,000 rupees per month. That's it. Then you will have to buy servers, correct? You will have computers, then you will have resources, you will have security guards, office, right? So always you will have to have employees, you have servers, you have the house rent. Now your business is not running. So where do you stand? You still have to pay 50,000 rupees. If your server is not working, you have to wake up your engineer at night to come and service it. If he is not there, your business doesn't work. Correct? And you cannot gain 50,000 whether or not your business functions. You have to still pay to the owner because you have rented that office. Now take the same situation and let's think what we did in the cloud forum. Correct? So we Amazon or Google or Azure, and we say that we want to start a consulting company, and this is my content. I have created a presentation. This is my sales bid. These are the documents which I need to host it, and this is the form. If somebody wants to take my consulting service, they can fill this form, and then one of our resources will talk to them. They understand everything, and then they tell you, okay, fine, 4,000 rupees per month. What you will choose? Here, if you don't have your business running, then also you don't have to pay for it. They will just take the minimum charge. Why? Pay as you go model. If I take a prepaid service, I put 200 rupees on my phone, that much only I can talk. Same thing. If I choose a cloud service provider, he is going to manage the office because the facility is theirs. Okay. So the physical security part is not the tension. The server management component is not my tension. What is my worry? I'm only giving my data. He's going to host it in the cloud. When I say that, okay, now it is Christmas time. So the load will be much more. People may ask for a lot of learning materials. Maybe I will open up a retail business. People want to purchase more. Christmas, New Year, lot of festivals coming. So let us speak up the load. All those stresses are not with the user. It is the decision of a cloud service provider. Okay, so the comparison I gave is because it actually helps you to reduce the capital expenditure to operational expenditure. Capital expenditure, we took a building to have 50,000 rupees paid, right? And then we have employees, we have to pay their salaries. Then we have other people who take care of the office material. You have to pay them also. You have assets, hardware assets, all the capital expenditures. You have servers. If something goes wrong, hardware, software, everything, right? Here, it becomes operational for you. From 50,000, you pay 4,000 rupees. Why? Because physical infrastructure is CSPs. Database is CSP, application CSP, physical guard managing your office CSP. What I have to do, I simply say that I need your space for 500 days. This is my content. It should be displayed 24/7. If somebody wants to book from my website, they should be able to do. For that, he will tell you, okay, you need this much of compute, this much of storage, this much of network, pay this much money. If you do not use it, then you pay the minimum rupees, 20 rupees maybe. That's it. So that is one of the biggest differentiating costs today, which made people to decide why not go to the cloud. Because obviously you will think about advancing your business. You will think about when you can focus on your business more and let other things be taken care by somebody. That is what attracted more to all the companies, all the business houses, everybody, in fact. Even the smallest today cooking also comes into the cloud, right? So people want to advertise that I'm doing these things. This is the everything is in the cloud display. You see GoDaddy websites, right? So those are 50 rupees, 150 rupees. You want to create a content and you want to share that knowledge. I want to post it. I just pay 150 rupees there, right? So that is one of the predominant cost. Second thing is about elasticity and scalability. Think about Myntra, Flipkart, right? They are retail shops, big in demand. Lot of people shop from there. When from October, the load becomes twice, thrice, maybe 10 times. If they would not have chosen to go into the cloud, what would be the ideal scenario? They would be keeping on requesting to upload their or update their storage content because what can a small memory fit in so much of requirement? My server will crash because of the request, correct? So the infrastructure itself will not support. They are in the cloud. So today, if I have 50 users, it can still support. Tomorrow, if I have 2,000 users per minute, then also it can support. So there is no difference. I don't really feel that difference. But if I don't go to the cloud today, what will happen? First of all, I have to raise a request. I have to say that this much memory, this much compute space I need. I have a traditional box and I still need 10 more servers to support it, right? Then that request goes to a procurement department. They procure the software or the hardware for your office. It goes for the bill of payment. The finance approves it. With all that thing done, it will take 30 to 45 days. By that time, your business will close. So your business requirement and the pace with what fastness you service your client cannot be met easily in a traditional setup until and unless you have a very long plan before. See, imagine a shop we have today, a physical shop where we go and buy, and you have something online. People just go click, okay, I need this, I need this. It comes in 10 minutes. And if the person who's opening the shop in the road, he has a very well established shop. If he's not coming personally there, then he's not doing any business. But if he puts the same thing in the cloud, he's still earning money, right? So scalability elasticity says, how do you match the demand based upon your business requirement? Whether you need more or whether you need less. Automatically, cloud has the capacity to do it. Okay, that is the reason we will see again how, okay, in the next slide. But this is why the second reason why people want to go. Pay as you go is the next criteria, which I feel is very valid. If I do not use my building for my office purpose, still I pay 50,000 rupees. But if in the cloud I use 2 hours of learning today in a lab, I only pay for that much. So it definitely makes sense to me, because if I've used 2 hours, let me pay for it. Let me not pay for 24 hours, right? So consumption based pricing, electricity, consumption based pricing. We all have meters at home. So you are going to the gas stations to fill up the vehicles, petrol stations, whatever you are filling, based on that you are paying. So why not on the internet, right? Business agility. Today I have a session. If my screen is not able to come into the computer and people cannot see, then if I cannot give a presentation as and when required, or maybe I cannot download my notes, which I need to showcase to the presentations tomorrow, what is the use of having internet? Here there is no boundary, whether it is morning, night, what time of the day, what time of the night. Moment you sign a contract saying that I need it for these many days, this many hours, your system is up and running. You simply go and click on a URL. That's it. So agility is very important. See, end of the day, every organization wants to service customers. So the cloud model itself was designed to serve the customers. So everywhere you will see as a service, software as a service, platform as a service. Why? The model itself was developed to offer it as a service. That's why. So these are the four core components which made people think, why not cloud? Okay, this is just a fundamental. I will go into details later, but I wanted to highlight something very critical here. Deployment models are many, models are also there. Why do we need to know? From a risk practitioner perspective, from a person who has worked in information security for quite number of years, I have always seen that you need to understand the models only because if you do not know the model, you cannot apply the control. It is something like, if I do not know the address, I cannot reach the destination. So if I don't know whether the cloud is private or the cloud is public, then how do I know what security control you will apply and what risk it will have if you don't have the control in place? Okay, so these are word-based understanding. If you see private, private means what? If we say private beach, right? Private house, what does it mean? Private to somebody. Similarly, private to somebody, private cloud is my cloud. Nobody else has a share there. That is private, individually maintained. So we can say that, okay, I want to create a study lab and it should be a private cloud. It means that only people who are there in this group can see it, right? What is public cloud? Open for all. That is public cloud. Community cloud is something, let's say, I'll give you a typical example where people generally use community clouds. Lot of sales professionals, right? So they keep on going to bid customers. They all need to tell them that how many bids they won. So there are 50 people who actually do the same job, which means what? they have the same idea, right? They work for the same thought process. So community. So cloud security community means these are the people who are actually interested to know more about cloud security. So community cloud means a group of users with a similar interest, right? So community cloud. Hybrid is something which is private and public. It is in real scenarios you will see where specifically sometimes you will see customers who have sensitive data. Let's say I have a database which has very critical information. I don't want to put it in the cloud. I will either go for a private cloud or maybe I will make it hybrid, which means that the information which is sensitive, I keep it on-prem. On-prem means in your office. And the rest of the portions, which is general information, I can move it to the cloud where people can see. So it's a combination of private and public cloud. That is why the name hybrid. But before anything of all of these names, right, a very important concept comes. Cloud is good, gives lot of advantages. Deployment models are good. Delivery models are good. But there is a very core component here, information. Whichever cloud it is, we should know what information exactly I'm going to store. That is what is the key differentiator to identify what controls I should have in place. What I should actually check. Very simple example. I will go and put my health report in Facebook. What will happen? It's a sensitive data, right? I go and by mistake upload it in Instagram. Tomorrow I put it in Dropbox without access control. What will happen? Anybody can download it, can use it for some benefit, can malign financial statements, healthcare records. So the idea of telling this is information and classification of information is important. Without that, you cannot understand what control you should use. And when a customer comes and tells you that I have healthcare record, then you realize what sort of cloud they are using. You have to understand those gaps. You have to understand how do you actually help organizations become better by knowing what setup they are using first. Hello, am I audible? Am I audible, guys?
அதாவது என்னன்னா ஒரிசாமி என்ன சொன்னா அப்படின்னா
Yes, sir, audible.
அதாவது போயிட்டு போயிட்டு வந்துருக்காங்க இப்பெல்லாம் கூட போயிட்டு போயிட்டு தான் வந்துருக்காங்க அப்படின்னா போயிட்டு அதாவது அவங்களுக்கு கிளியரா தெரியல போறாங்க வராங்க அப்படின்னு போயிட்டு போயிட்டு வந்துட்டு இருக்காங்க ஃபுல்லா ஃபாலோ பண்ணிட்டு வந்து போயிட்டு போயிட்டு வந்துருக்காங்க அப்படின்னு
Sir, I think somebody should go on mute
வந்து
here.
அழிப்ப சொன்னது அதுலயே மாநிலத்துக்கு அவங்க போயிட்டு போயிட்டு வந்துருக்காங்களா அப்படின்னு மாநிலம் போயிட்டு அங்க இருக்காங்க போயிட்டாங்க அங்க இருக்காங்க.
Okay. So delivery models, as I said, cloud model is always device.
நான் சொன்னேன் இல்ல நாங்க கேட்கறோம் இங்கதான் இருந்தாங்க போகணும்னு பிளான் பண்ணாங்களா போகலையா அப்படின்ற இல்ல கோவிந்தசாமி 4 நாளா அங்கதான் இருக்காங்கன்னு சொன்னா அப்படின்னு ஒருவேளை கோவிந்தசாமி மாநிலத்துக்கு சொன்னாங்க 4 நாளா அங்கதான் இருக்கிறாங்கன்ட்டு சொன்னா அப்படிங்களா இல்ல அதுக்கு வாய்ப்பு இருக்கு
So delivery models, basically we have software as a service.
சிஎம் வந்து எல்லாம் கோட்டா எல்லாமே ஃபைனலைஸ் ஆகி வரட்டும் வந்த பிறகு கையெழுத்து அது அப்புறமா அனௌன்ஸ் பண்ணி இப்போ வேண்டாம் அப்படின்னு
Okay, so we are here. Actually, the concept of as a service, which I told you, that cloud was designed. I'm sorry, I think somebody's talking without mute.
Co-host, you can mute them. Just you can mute them.
I don't see that option actually.
Sir, host, sir, please mute them, sir.
உங்களுக்கு எங்க ஐஆர்டிடில இருந்து வந்தா நியூஸ் இந்த சென்னையில இருக்குங்களா?
Okay. So I'll give a very nice example of infrastructure as a service. If we have to just go and say that I just need a storage box, okay, and in that storage box I just need to put some data in that, but I need a space. So where I will fit it, I'll go in for infrastructure as a service. But the same thing, if I say that I have developed a software which I want to host it on the cloud, then it becomes a software as a service, because the user has developed the software. Now what he wants to sell this product into the market. So when he goes to sell, he goes to the cloud service provider and tells them that, okay, I want to host this software into in your environment so that I can get more customers. So he's already hosting the software on the cloud. It becomes software as a service. As a service concept, it came because the cloud model itself was designed like that. So in either today we get an infrastructure as a service, that means the physical facility, the servers, okay. Platform as a service, it is a platform. Predominantly 90% developers today love to use platform as a service. The reason, because you have already all the languages embedded into the platform, you get a space for yourself, you go develop a code, you can test, you can debug, okay, that's your space. Again, it depends on what sort of cloud you have used, whether you have taken a private space for yourself or you want a dedicated instance alone for you, right? And software as a service. We defined a software, we did all the security checks, we are good to go, no vulnerabilities. We go and find a cloud provider, host it. That becomes software as a service. People go, click on the URL and shop whatever your application provides, right? So they all become software as a service. But there are certain essential characteristics which actually govern the cloud: on-demand self-service, measured service, resource pooling, rapid elasticity, broad network access. These are the 5 actual characteristics which we had. But ISO 17788 actually brought a new word: multi-tenancy. You can imagine an apartment. I can consider that apartment as the cloud, and every apartment, every house in that is a tenant, right? So similar concept, multi-tenancy is a characteristic of cloud. It has advantages, it also has disadvantages. While you can host multiple clients into one particular perimeter, you have to be also sure that the data is not commingled, because my data can be shared with yours, your data may be getting shared with somebody else. So we should be very clear on how we are actually segregating our spaces. But multi-tenancy actually is an advantage and a characteristic which is coming with the customer, with the cloud. And the Cloud Security Alliance, along with NIST, developed these 5 properties. But ISO brought this word called multi-tenancy, which is now recognized as one of the characteristics too. So this was just to give an idea, like, though we have deployment models, delivery models to make service better, we can always choose what sort of a cloud we need. But as a risk practitioner, the very important step is what data exactly we have. So if I have a newspaper, it's a public information. If it's my blood report, it is a private information. I should understand, if I put my private data in the public cloud with no access control, what can happen. So from a risk practitioner standpoint, we should always see exactly what your customer is telling you and what exactly you are going to bring in as a benefit. What are the security lapses and how do you fix it? I have seen areas where people have very well-defined policies. They have really well-defined policy. They have a group of very skilled people. They have a very good framework also, how they function. Then what they do is they just forget that they configured they missed out a configuration setting. And in one of the folders, they have kept it as open for public. That's it. Though you have the entire services ready, the entire house is ready, but you have already opened the back door. So while we understand cloud, it is also very important for us that we need to understand with each cloud what information, how it is accessible, all the information concepts around it to be more secure. This is just simple lines, I would say, on what is exactly, the characteristics of cloud. while we saw advantages, capital expenditure to operational expenditure, measured service, those are characteristics, there are benefits which we get. There are certain characteristics also which makes cloud more feasible for users today, right? So self-service, on-demand self-service. There is nothing called an administrator today. If I have to go, I will talk to the admin saying I need this compute. That system has gone. I will simply go to the graphical user interface of any cloud service provider and I can just pull out what resource I want. And whatever I use, they have a contract for that. That if you use this machine for this much amount of time, then this is the bill which you have to pay. So it's on demand without having to talk to a human admin. Okay, then measured service. Measured service we already discussed, right? So pay, I have used 2 hours of data. Today I created a test lab. I did it for 2 hours. I pay for that. I don't pay for the entire 24 hours. Rapid elasticity, scale or becoming elastic because of your requirements. When your demand grows, the power grows, the support model grows. When you don't require it, they don't charge you extra, they don't bill you extra for any resource. Okay, so provisioning, deprovisioning happens over seconds. In a practical traditional IT, in office experiences, if we have to raise a server request, it will go through 10 steps, right? So in any office you take, you need to bring a server in to your office premises. You actually need to understand what server we have to take, what make we have to take, then what will be available. Then if I go to the finance, then they should approve for it. Okay, then I have to explain them that okay, this is the requirement. Then we also go for an approval, we raise a request. It takes 30 days, 40 days, some spare part is not available, 60 days. In a cloud environment, you don't have to bother. There are people who would actually tell you for this particular service, this is what is the best architecture you can use. What are your responsibilities? They will tell you as a cloud, as a data owner, while they will tell you what they will do from their perspective, and agreement is signed and service is up in 2 to 3 hours. Okay, broad network access, anywhere, everywhere, content delivery networks. The idea of edge computing, right, is predominantly on CDN today. The most evolving one is edge and fog computing today. It is actually the background knowledge is the cloud, the CDN network. So if I have a data center in Bombay, I put the data there and I start downloading, it will be faster for me because I am in the India zone. If I put it in a China data center, or maybe I put it in Russia, obviously the bandwidth may take time. So they create the cache points in different cities so that you get your data access faster. They always tell you to upload near. So caching happens, right? So when you click, it will cache the data from the nearest data center for you. So broad network access is, it's a predominant characteristic of the cloud itself, because one, they have huge resources which you cannot see, but it is available for you. Okay, so whenever you want, wherever you want, data is ready. 99.99% availability. Okay, resource pooling. If one customer is sitting in one server in a traditional IT infrastructure, the second customer can go in the second box only. In the cloud, you do not have to worry about it. We have 10 customers, we want space for them, we can allocate, because you are not allocating physically. The resources are already there in a pool. It is getting allocated. There is an admin who's sitting in the cloud data center who's taking your request and allocating resources as and when the requirement is. Okay, so these are actually the predominant 5 characteristics which is defined as per the Cloud Security Alliance. Okay, we have already gone through it. It is just a idea that, okay, we should see it. I will also tell you the security considerations which we should have here. So public cloud, private cloud, community cloud, hybrid cloud. There are 2 ways to see it. You are the user, that means you are deciding where you want to keep the data, or you are a consultant where your customer is asking you that this is the data where I should keep it, right? So basically from the architecture standpoint, or the consultant standpoint, or from the user perspective, whichever perspective we have to see, we have to first think about what cloud it is. So the same example, right? Everywhere information is important, because finally what exactly are you storing in the cloud? It's all information. So securing that information becomes important. As I said, people have everything in place and they forget a configuration to be done. They forget role-based access. So they give access to 20 people who should not see the data. And though they have very good practices, they still go into losses because they lose all the credibility in the market, right? So public, as we already discussed, generally largely for a organ, it is just opened up to the public. Amazon public cloud, Google public cloud, they have public cloud. You want to take it as a service in the public cloud, you can host. You think about something which is very sensitive to your business or your organization, you may think about private cloud solely for a single organization, right? Community, as we discussed, sales offices, one community, cloud security researchers, one community. So they can actually have a community cloud. That means like-minded people, basically with the same thought process, same job. They can be segregated as a community. Many companies have different community clouds built. Like for example, one can have a sales cloud. You can have the let's say something on human resource. You can have something on finance. So all those type of services can be in one cloud, and then you segregate it with access controls. So your data doesn't get intermingled. You encrypt the information also, which is sensitive for you. So layered technology again. You cannot protect information in one layer. So if you lock the first entrance of your door in your house and you leave the entrance on the terrace open, you are still vulnerable for a theft. You have to do layered technology. So layered processes to stop information loss. So at every layer, whether it is implementing a CCTV camera or doing background verification, you have to do at every layer. So same way, community, you installed a community doesn't mean it automatically protects you. You have to choose the security controls which makes your architecture more robust, right? Then comes hybrid, which we already discussed, private plus public, ideally seen in private public scenarios where organizations keep private data in on-prem and public data which they can share on the public forum. So they use a combination of that. This is something on multi-tenancy. So I thought of bringing this up because we can have a clarity. What is exactly multi-tenancy? I gave you an example of the apartment. But internally, when you see with respect to cloud security domain expertise, we have to understand this. See, single tenant, right? So you can see one user using one application. That application fetches the data from one DB. That is single tenant. App 1, app 2, app 3. But if you go to multi-tenant, what happens? One application is there. It may be talking to multiple DB, but one resource is getting shared between three people. So multi-tenancy comes with the concept of cloud because that is one way how people actually can host multiple customers. If I take organization A, I can host 10 customers in one environment, which has higher end capacity of compute, network, and storage. I don't have to utilize 10 different boxes in my server room. Rather, I go for one high-end server and put 10 customers there. But again, that decision has to decide upon what information the clients are using. If one of my customers is using extremely critical data, then we will never advise them to go with the group sharing of resources. We will obviously advise them to stay in a private setup, right? So multi-tenancy, just to bring out the idea of how exactly it looks, what is exactly being multi-tenant, it is actually sharing a resource among multiple users. Now let's talk on few of the, I won't focus more on the left hand side because we already spoke a lot. This right hand side is something which we should really know. Here is the level where you actually think about what controls you can fix in, right? So when you talk about infrastructure as a service, what you actually get, you get a facility, you get some hardware, you get core connectivity delivery, network cables, fiber optic cables, connectivity wires. So I have a facility. I just want to use the facility of Amazon and I want to use the hardware alone because I will bring my own storage and upload there maybe. That is infrastructure as a service. When it comes to platform, it is just the middleware, the purple one. It's just a middleware which is actually sitting. You just go and then log in and then do your coding of your application, predominantly used by developers. Again, we need to know something. The same situation, if you would have done a secure SDLC practice in a traditional IT environment, what you would have done? You developed a code, you have to test it, right? Your developer tester access should be different. Your zone should be different. After you do that, once your code is ready, the testing is ready, still you'll do a vulnerability assessment to see if there is any vulnerability or bugs in the code, right? And then you sanitize it. Then alone becomes ready to move into production. Same stuff here also. You have to think from that aspect that security controls also need to be seen. Though it is only the difference that today we don't use a hardware box, we are using something. I just go log in with my username password. I'm getting a platform where I can code it over the internet. But that also means that I should keep in mind what controls I should see, whether it is access control, download, read only access, whether I should use any tools to scan my code. It still remains the same. We need to be even more careful. Then comes software as a service, applications, right? Presentation application. So presentation modality, your applications, everything comes into your software as a service. This is just one step down to make you, or to give a glance of exactly what is IAS, what is PAS, and what is SAS. That's it. But the idea still stays the same. Infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, and software as a service, right? So this is just one step down to have a better clarity. Okay, here I think this is something which is going to stay throughout a risk practitioner and information security professional's life, because till we understand actually these 6 phases, nothing is secured. And whether you store your data in your traditional IT environment or you put it in the cloud, until and unless you actually know what exactly you store, you actually cannot protect it. So if I do not know what information I have in my system, then how will I know what controls I should put? If I have something, if I have gold in my house, then I will be more particular to lock the drawer. Why? Gold is important. Materialistically, that is going to fetch me value. Then I lock everything, correct? But if I do not understand the value of that gold kept in the house, I throw it out and somebody steals it. So similarly, take information which you are not aware that whether you should classify as high or medium or low. And then you do not know what controls you should apply. Then what will happen? The same story, right? You build the castle and then open the door. So these 6 phases are something which actually stays in and out. You do audit and compliance, you do risk, you do privacy impact assessments, you do anything. This is the fundamental. Because everywhere, somewhere it has to start and it has to get destroyed, right? So somewhere you have to create a document. Let's say I created an Excel. I populated all the data. Very good. I saved it also. Now I wanted to share it. I shared it with my folks, and then I have to use it. That means you process that information. So basically this is a data security life cycle. Okay, then store it. Obviously after you use, you store it. If you don't use the data, you archive it for a longer period of time, and then you destroy it. So basically this is a initiation to the ending cycle. But then we need to know that if I have created an Excel which is only meant for A, B, C, and I share it over 20,000 folks whom I don't even know, my data is still lost. So security has to be thought from the day one. The moment you get a piece of information, we should know what data is this, who's the owner, what are we using for, who's going to have access to that data, why do I need to share it with whom, how are they going to use it, right? So this idea always should be in the mind, where you can actually think one step ahead. Think about personally identifiable data. Think about SSN numbers. Think about credit card numbers, CVV values. Think about jurisdictions, GDPR, Europe. You have so many laws coming up today. Even we are going to have very soon. I really wish that our law also will be passed for India. But imagine the amount of data, and if you do not have a particular cycle, very common way of exposure, we go for multiple checks, right? We go for health checkups. So many counters are there, they just take your blood and do analysis. That is good. What they do, many times they will have it in the software somewhere. correct? So if somebody is securing their information, they will exactly know where they will store what data and who should access it. Imagine I have a sensitive record of someone, I go and upload it in Box or OneDrive or anything which is storage solution on the cloud. I don't give access control there, correct? What happens? The next customer comes who can see my data, he takes it, makes a copy, takes it out. I don't even know. He goes and makes it public. What I go through? Penalty, reputation loss, criminal case, contractual loss. Correct? So these words will look very small, but it has very, very big impact. And always the the security of the information lies with the data owner. And in fact, the cloud service providers also have the same say. In contracts today, in contractual obligations, they clearly write that the security of information is yours. The security of the cloud is ours. They mean to say that the physical phase, the physical requirements, the components, the servers, everything we will take care. But what you are inputting, you should be worried about. That means if I am entering a data, I should know that I should encrypt it if it is sensitive. Even after people telling that, okay, this is sensitive data, we should not have access to 20 people, same username, same password, leaving the data outside. These are common mistakes which happen till today, which has an impact on the data breach. Okay, so this is a cycle, this is a life cycle, but at every phase we should know what security controls we should actually do. Storing the data. You may store it somewhere in the online cloud solutions. There is nothing wrong about it. But we should know that if my data is general information, it's okay. But if it is sensitive, then I need to protect it. I should encrypt it, right? I should give a password and protect so nobody can see it. I should not give download access. If I'm sharing it, then only I should be able to share that information, not anyone. Correct? Destruction of information also, you would see a lot of times destroying the data is very critical. Even if you store the data on the cloud service provider, we should always ask them the authenticity, the certification of destruction. Tomorrow that becomes your legal document if in case there is any data which is misused, right? So these are basically the create, share, use, store, archive, destroy is basically the information of the data life cycle. It becomes little important when we are in the cloud environment because the cloud environment is nothing but the third party today, right? So it is not our building, it is somebody else's infrastructure platform which we are using. So when you are having a relationship with the third party, we also need to understand the types of supply risk which may come in. Correct. So these are all the important words which you need to understand, or anyone can need to understand throughout the life till you handle information over the cloud. Provider's responsibility is security of the cloud. Customer's responsibility is security in the cloud. If I create a data piece and upload in the cloud and that loses because I do not give access control, it is not Amazon's problem. Amazon will say that you use my infrastructure, you use this compute storage, you pay me 20 rupees per hour, but the data which you are putting, it is your consideration, whether you want to encrypt the data, whether you have to maintain access control, or you just want to put it in the public environment, right? So we need to be sure that ownership of the data is with the data owner. Cloud service provider is nothing but a third party who's renting his infrastructure, platform, and applications to you so that you enjoy the benefits of cloud. But while you enjoy the benefits of cloud, it is also very important that we actually know how well we are securing that data. Okay. So let's go to this slide. I have taken this to actually show you. This is an Amazon's shared security model. You see the same diagrams for Azure. You can see it for Google. There are different cloud service providers today in the market. But if you see, they will say, if you see the left-hand side, it says responsibility for security in the cloud. In blue color, you see the first line, customer data. That means customer is solely responsible for the data it hosts. As I said, right, we decided like 10 critical client information we will host in the cloud. So we are the persons actually who have to decide how we will protect that information. What is the use of protecting that data? Right? So we have to decide it. Why? Because we know why we are keeping that data. The AWS guy doesn't know. He's simply giving you the data center to use. Okay. Secondly, identity access management. It's a very core concept. See the idea of today's environment, right? All students, all teachers, all office goers, all school kids, everybody is at home using a laptop. Consider situations where critical business operations are happening. They are all working from home. If you do not have a strong identity access management, what will happen? I can use my own system, access my company data, give it to somebody, correct? You should have an identity access management because you are identifying, you are giving your authentication, you are getting authorized to access to the network. So it's a very important component. In terms of cloud, the customer data which is there also should have identity access management in place. Which user should have what access to the data, whether he's authorized to see the data which I have in my cloud. That should be defined. Operating system, network, firewall configurations. Very well. In infrastructure as a service, he gave me the hardware. Now I am going to take the operating system and put it there. But if my operating system doesn't have hardening, it is filled with bugs, what will happen? It will corrupt the entire network. So in the infrastructure as a service option, generally the operating system, the firewall configurations, network is managed by the customer. When you choose something on the platform and the software as a service, that is where Amazon or GCP or Oracle Cloud, they take the lead, right? Then see AWS security of the cloud. So what they take care of you? They give you regions. They give you availability zones. Okay, so availability zone is nothing but it's a terminology which is configured by Amazon. They call availability zone. The real meaning is a data center. Okay, so different zones, different regions have multiple data centers, multiple availability zones. Edge locations are nothing but where the content delivery network can work. Caching. So every data center again will have certain edge locations. They handle the compute, storage, database, networking, global infrastructure for you, while you handle the ones in the blue. Predominant being customer data, identity access management, your configurations, encryption. Okay, so all that we manage. We are responsible to know that what exactly we are. So because can a third party provider know who's authorized user for me? No, I only have to tell them that as a data owner, A, B, C are authorized users. They can have read access to my data. D, customer can download the data because he's the actual partner in this business. So I define that. And based on that, only your identity and access management rules will work. So this is basically a shared responsibility model concept. Okay, the shared responsibility model says that while I give infrastructure, application, storage, compute to you, I am responsible for that. The CSP says the customer data is still responsibility of the customer. Okay, so this diagram actually suffixes this particular statement which we saw, that provider's responsibility is security of the cloud, while the customer's responsibility is security in the cloud, right? So this is important. We should know what we are taking. Okay, this is one level deep. You just need to see the, I just thought of bringing it up because many times we feel user access management is not my issue. No, it is still our issue, because we should think from a data owner's perspective. We should always have a risk and a privacy mindset, because today's information can only be protected with that. If we do not understand the roles and responsibility, you cannot segregate your information. What you should see only should be given to you. The concepts of least privilege, right? The concept of segregation of duties have to be taken care. So predominantly it is just to give an idea of what we can handle where, but basically the customer data is always managed by the customer. The access control configurations related to network and firewall stays with the customer, while you still manage encryption, but then they give you the storage box. You put the documents there and you decide whether you want to encrypt the data. That is with you. Okay, so this is just to give that idea. Okay. All good things we talked. We also are moving slowly towards the risk, impact, and privacy issues which can happen. Anything which is generated in Europe should stay in Europe. If I release any data from the European server to India server, then I will have a criminal offense, right? So there are multiple things which you need to take care, but there are multiple threats also which come into the cloud. So when you go and use the benefits of the cloud while you are enjoying the cost benefits, you are very happy that you are a proud cloud user. We should also know why data security or information security and cloud security rather is more important. These are just the top 12 threats today. In 2020, this was the latest highest ratings which people have given for these type of attacks. But you can still go to internet. You can type ENISA, Cloud Risk Assessment Report. You can see the number of breaches they have identified. It's a huge list of issues which can happen to the cloud environment, while these top 12 still remain the top 12. You see the first one. The first one which everybody voted is data breach. It's a same story. If all policies frameworks work, but then data breach still happens, and organizations take a long time to figure out like why this breach happened. It could be because of a simple reason that a security awareness session was not given to somebody, so the user did not know what to do, what not to do. He went and uploaded some critical document on the public cloud. Everybody got to see that. Company loss, company had a reputational loss. All the money went in paying the penalty. You become bankrupt, right? So data breach still stays number one attack in the cloud. Insufficient identity credential access management is at number two. You do not identify which resources should use what resources should work on which project. You don't give proper authorizations to them. This also becomes a major issue, right? Insecure interface. I take the operating system, installed it. Then after that, I installed an application. I never did any check on that app, whether it has any bug or not. That's all. I opened it up for 20 people. I said, okay, work on this. What happened? Malware. Correct? Insecure operations. In fact, all your edges, all your connectivities, your physical infrastructures, your operating systems, applications should go through a regular periodic assessment, because that is the only way how you can identify what vulnerabilities you have in your system and your applications and how will you remediate it. If you cannot remediate, then what are the controls which you can do to ensure that you are not becoming a problem to not having a problem tomorrow. Account hijacking. Username Soma, password Soma. I go and tell to 10 people that my username password is the same, or I write it and paste it on my table. Though account hijacking still happens through a third party who actually gets a vulnerability in your network and tries to hijack your account by actually using certain brute force tools so that they can identify what password you have kept, and they hijack the account totally. So imagine the organization's account goes to somebody's hands, what disaster they can do, right? Malicious insider. Malicious means what? Somebody who doesn't have a definite intent, right? He doesn't have a good intent. So I'm working in a company. Now I don't have right intent. What I will try to do, I'll try to do some mischief in the areas where I can create problems. So those type of people also become a threat for the organization later on. And that is why the concept of periodic awareness trainings, doing background verification checks, everything becomes very important before an employee is chosen. Disciplinary actions after the employee is identified that he has done something wrong. So all these controls, administrative controls are put in place because of these. Advanced persistent threat, APT. The threat agent, basically the hacker, remains hidden where nobody can detect him. Persistently tries to get into the network by using technologies and processes. And when he enters into your network, he gathers all the information and tries to create even more problems so that you completely lose your business to them. All the type of ransomware business malware attacks come into this category. With all this happening, there is a separate segment which they have identified called data loss. While data breach also leads to data loss, while all these things will also lead to data loss, they still wanted to capture data loss as a separate threat. You can never gauge the amount of penalty, the amount of problems which can happen when the data is actually lost for an organization. Imagine you build a business over the years, you have multiple clients who trust you. You lost one critical data. What do you have? They sue you, then you are going to the courts, you're paying the money, the data is out in the market, your names are published everywhere, you lose your reputation, no more clients come to you, whoever is there also goes away. Those kind of impacts are there when an information is lost. So importance is understanding the information, understanding the classification of information, understanding the right controls you fix for that classified data, treating the risk, right? Identifying the risk and treating it, and how exactly you can make the risk acceptable.
Madam
That is
Bola.
what. Sorry, is anyone talking?
Ma'am, you carry on, ma'am.
Achha, okay. Then insufficient due diligence. This is where the role of auditors, the risk assessors come. There is a requirement of the huge requirement, in fact, of auditors and risk assessment, the people who can actually do risk assessments and audits, compliance checks. Why? They are the ones who would have a third party view, actually, to see all what are the gaps we have in the system and how do we cure it, right? So auditors and risk assessors also play a very important role because they do a due diligence to actually identify the gaps in your system. So they tell you, when you feel that I have done all the 10 best practices, they will come and tell you from a standard that this is not there. So that is where you fix it and you become more secure. So every organization goes through periodic audits and risk compliances every year, every month, based upon their requirements, and it's a periodic process. But if you do not do due diligence, means what? That means I built my own system, I felt I'm very happy, so I self attest myself saying I have everything in place. That doesn't work. When you bring a third party view, an independent view, then only you can know the losses which you can incur if the problems are not fixed, and those problems are identified by doing due diligence activities. Okay. Abuse and nefarious use of cloud services. That means what? I have taken my space, I have hosted my data, but I am not supposed to see any other customer's information. I start doing vulnerability assessment, penetration testing in the network. I try to hack. So I use the same cloud service which is giving me a benefit, actually using it for the wrong side, right? So abusing that service. Denial of service, we all know, right? So no service you get because you just choke the network, send multiple packets to your network stream. What will happen? You cannot view the resource at all. So denial of service still remains in 11th position. And shared technology vulnerability. Using the same technology, that means 3 clients are using one VMware box. I used type 2. The operating system had a problem, so all the 3 got infected. Many cases, people also use proprietary technology and they do not even have a dependency. Like for example, I develop my own code, okay, and it is a very well written code. I sell it in the market, very good. What I do, I don't keep that logic, that code into a third party escrow. What I do is I have it in me, so I know that okay, fine, I only can rectify. So tomorrow my let me say I went out of the business or something happens to me, 20 clients are using that software. What they will do, they will also go out of the business because there is nobody who knows about this technology. So both sides, not only shared technology, but usage of proprietary technology also should be thought about before using. And if we are planning to use like this, we should always have a contractual requirement of having a third party who holds the code. Otherwise it becomes a problem, right? So these are the 12 attacks, but you can get huge list of attacks from the NSR report. And also if you just go and type the threads, you will see a lot of attacks which get published every year. Year on year, these positions change, but I haven't seen data breach changing. Data breach still stays number 1. Okay. Okay. This, I would give you a case study here, basically in 5 minutes, and I'll just walk you through quickly. I created this slide because I thought this will be little interesting for people who would like to set up their cloud governance models. They want to have their own, they are the decision makers or advisors. For the students who want to learn more about how do we actually set up a governance framework. So basically you have to see, you have to understand this from a perspective. Okay, you have to understand this from a perspective of a case study. Let's say I have a customer called A. So we are all part of the same company. The customer says that, okay, I'm giving this project to you. So what do you think you need most when you want to run the project or you want to execute anything basically in the company? The first thing is leadership support. If you do not have the executive leadership support, you actually cannot start the business, neither complete the business. You know why? Because there are 3 layers. One is a strategic layer, one is a tactical layer, one is the operational layer. So your governance board, your executive committees are those folks who actually decide the strategy and the direction, right, of the business. The tactical, the middle management layer actually are the folks who actually get that idea and then decide thought processes. How do we reach to the goal? Okay. And the operations group or the working group are the folks who actually execute it so that your action is met. So one defines it, one thinks how to achieve it, and the third guy does it. So all the three have to be on sync to achieve a particular work. So we have everything in place, but why do we need governance? So we go to a university to study. Then why do we need teachers? Why do we need invigilators in exam? They govern whether the practices are met or not. Why do we need governing bodies? They always enforce, right? They are the ones who decide what policies, procedures, technologies people should be used to ensure that the right kind of action is achieved. They are the governing ones. So in any organization, in any business, in any thought process, you need to have something called as a governing framework. Always. You can run 10 businesses, you can run 10 projects. I took some project to study, but there is nobody to govern me, so I forget that. I do something else, right? So there is a governing need in everything we do. People, process, technology. If one goes out, the other two cannot function. I brought the best technology and put it in my office, but there is no person to learn about it. So what difference it makes to me, right? You bring people, then you do not know what you have to do with them. So both, all the three things, agendas have to be thought. So people, process, technology, work in handshake model, while your strategy, your tactical and your operational layer also work together. Okay. Now let's take a idea which I told you, like the client comes and tells you that there is a project and now this is hosted in the cloud. This is my, these are my third parties. Now manage it, govern it, right? That can be thought from two sides. You are going to implement it, become the advisor, or it is your work and you want to see whether you are doing it properly. You use it in any way. This is just a thought process, but these fundamentals never change. You can change the way you want to make it, but predominantly your leadership support is the number one criteria because it is always top down approach. The finance, the strategy, the support comes from them. Then only you can take it and then make it realized, right? So when you say that I want to govern, what exactly you need? You need a standard. Why do you need a standard? Standard is an industry best practice requirement which is written by learned people, and standard is mandatory. You cannot escape a standard. If you take a standard, you have to follow it. ISO is a very common standard, and 27001 2013, the ISMS, Information Security Management Framework, right? So that is the widely used organization wide certificates or standard which is used in every company. Any service industry, you will see who handles information goes through ISO 27001 2013. There are many which I have written, depends upon the requirements. So let's say we picked up one standard. So what do we do now? From that standard, we need to identify what can be a policy, what can be a procedure, right? It is very important to know. Similarly, why we will say policy procedure, if my customer says that he is processing healthcare data, right? Then I will make the policy and procedure based on that requirement only, correct? So maybe access control can be an SOP, Maybe he wants to encrypt the data, right? So different policies. Policy is your direction level. Procedure tells you how you do it. So SOP. Guideline is the even more granular level of achieving the SOP. Risk management, 100% yes. To understand the gap between as is status and where you want to reach, you have to do risk management. And this basically has 4 steps. If you don't identify the risk, then how do you know, how do you assess it, right? So I should first know whether there is a risk. After you identify that, then you assess it to see what impact it can give you. Then you decide a risk response towards it, right? So risk response is nothing but we call it as the 4 T's. So you either risk mitigate it. That means you decide, okay, this is going to impact me. I have to close this risk, right? So that is mitigation. You want to transfer the risk. You say, no, I cannot afford it now. If I put a control, it is going to take more. The problem is 2 rupees and then to spend 2000 rupees. So I will transfer it to a third party. I insure it basically, right? Avoid the risk. Even if the risk is notified, let it go to hell. I don't care. That is avoiding the risk, which is very dangerous nature of a risk professional. You cannot just avoid the risk without knowing the impact, right? And tolerate the risk. Okay, it is this problem, but then I can solve it by doing this. I can tolerate it for another 2 months, and if it is not closing, yes, then I have to take a call, right? So that is called risk tolerance. Monitoring, reporting. Why do we need to monitor and report? We need to do. If you identify 10 risks and you don't monitor it, what will happen? You never know what is the status of that risk today. So always monitoring, reporting are important. Audits and compliance, nothing but due diligence. So if I have taken a standard to make a framework or to follow the policy procedures, I should also audit to see whether I'm actually complying to that. What I'm saying I'm doing or no. That is what is audit and compliance. Key performance indicators. Client has given a contract, we have signed it, and we are servicing our customers, right? Everybody services some customer. So when you go, when you are providing a service, you are saying that, yeah, I will give you 10 reports in 2 months time. Your performance metric is that. If you don't perform, you are actually losing your business. So it is actually a measure which is strong for you, which is a weakness for your problem, right? Service strategy design comes in the leadership level. They are the ones who generate the strategy. They are the ones who give you finance. They are the ones who actually manage the complete bucket for you, where the tactical roles actually have the thought process. How do we achieve what the leadership wants, right? Service operations is also something which needs to be thought about. See, for example, we serviced our client. We have everything in place. Client is very happy. We are also getting new business. Okay, fine, good. Suddenly some problem has happened. How do you know a problem has happened? Until and unless you record it, until and unless you identify it. That is where the service operations come into picture. The service operations are those people who actually read what tickets have been raised. You have service now, you have multiple service desk tools today. All organizations put ticketing systems into their environment. Only reason because it categorizes into different service levels. So if I have a problem, I can raise a ticket and tell them that it is a problem. So, but there are guys who will actually understand whether it is one-time problem, repeated problem, how they will do what. So everything is a process inside. And if these pillars are not met, then also your framework doesn't succeed. You fail somewhere. And then comes project management. Obviously, you run a project, you have 1,000 things running. There has to be somebody who takes care of all the activities in detail, right? So that you mature to the next level. So on day one, you do not become the expert. You start with basics. You start the identifying the gaps. You say these controls I can do. This is how I'm going to fix, right? You evolve. So it is always a matter of continual improvement. Okay, so this is just on giving an idea on how governance also matters. And one of the very important thing is supplier risk management. Supplier means the one who supplies you services or goods. In cloud service provider concept, they are also third party providers for you. So whenever you choose a cloud service provider for your business, you should always ask them whether they are audited, whether they are certified with certain security standards, whether they are ready to give you all the controls which they should provide to you. Okay. Okay, I have taken 5 minutes. I will show you something here on the AWS cloud. So let me just stop this and share my screen. S3 is very simple to learn. You may be knowing much more than that, but this is something like I wanted to show you. By having a governance framework like this, and then we forget to configure a bucket, then what happens actually? What can go wrong? Okay. So while I don't have time to create buckets, I had created it last night. So I can show it to you directly. So let me showcase that particular slide screen. See, I'm in Amazon console now. Okay, so you can just go to Amazon free tier in Google and it gives you 1 year free trial basis. Okay, do not host any data there because without knowing the nitty-gritties, if you host data, then it may be insecure, but you can use it for your learning purpose. So S3 simple storage service. So every cloud provider has its own way of differentiating terms, right? So Microsoft calls it as a blob and Amazon calls it as S3. S3 is nothing but object storage. So you generally people use it for storing documentations, photos, files. Okay. So it's nothing but a object storage. That is all we need to know. So if you go to services, if you just click on services, you see the host of services here. You can choose any service what you want to do and you can have a run. S3 is predominantly comes under the storage because it's a storage service. That is the reason. So I basically went into that Amazon S3 and here I've created 3 buckets. Okay. So if you see here, if you just want to create a bucket, you can create it. Just go to create bucket and put any a bucket name of your choice. So you can see the regions. These are all the data centers, availability zones, basically. So for Mumbai, Sydney, you have every, so these are basically the regions and these are all your availability zones. Okay. See something here which I would like to show you. Bucket settings for block public access. Let me show you here itself in the screen. I have created already. So see this bucket. Public test 2 is a bucket which has objects can be public. That means the access which I have given as a data owner is objects can be public. Okay. And I've created one more bucket where I've written bucket and objects are not public. So when you create a bucket, you as a data owner can decide whether you want to block all public access or you miss this out and then it becomes public. Even if you follow the best policy procedures, you have the topmost people in the company, you have finances, you have everything in place and you forgot this, correct? And once you forgot this, what you did, you went and uploaded all the client documents and then it is out in the public everywhere. The point which I wanted to state here is you can have a very broad governance framework, documentations, everything written, but the technology and the process have to go hand in hand. If you know everything, but you still miss it out, it is still showing you objects can be public, but I missed it out. While configuring itself, I missed out. What can happen? I have a diligent framework. I have done every best practice in my organization. Unfortunately, I missed to give the best practices here. If I click on this bucket, see this, see these actions which will be there. Okay, let me go back, sign me out. So here, if you see, bucket and objects are not public. If I actually upload a Word document here and keep it, it means that only the user can see. And wherever I can give access, I can show it. But if I choose something where I have made it objects can be public, any user who logs in might be able to see if he tries to see it. Okay, so the idea is if you want to actually gain knowledge on cloud security, we have everything there. What is actually important is understanding how data, what data you are doing, what classification you have given, how you have choosing controls to make it more effective. If we do not have, if we have everything and then we make the smallest configuration, which is actually a real life scenario, which came out in the news also, somebody missed to just block the public access and they lost huge amounts of data, million of fines, still the court case happens on them. It's just because we missed to actually give the configuration. Okay, so the idea was to tell you that how big your framework will be. That is good to have a framework. It is always good to know different things and to have things in place. But while we talk about so many benefits and advantages, and then we do not decide about the smallest configurations which can lead to data loss, right? So that's all about today's session, and thank you so much for letting me speak. If there are any questions, I would like to definitely address it. You can also reach to me on my LinkedIn, and we can chat and also clarify things or discuss further.
Thank you very much, madam. This is a wonderful session as well as an informative session to explain in detail about the entire cloud services. We are all inspired about the session, and we are all proud about that the word cloud is coined by an Indian, Mr. Chalapan sir. Now we'll move to the question session. There is a few chats are there in the chat box. I'll read one or two. What is the difference between data breach and data loss?
Okay, so what data loss is what when you lose the data completely, right? So I hosted something on the cloud, but exactly what happened is I forgot to configure, which I just showed you, and as a result of which the loss happened. That is exactly what is data loss. That means it has the output is the data is already out from your control. Okay, so that is completely called as the data loss. When you talk about breach, it has more of a privacy impact attached to it. Okay, it talks about exposure of confidential details. Loss is losing the data. I lost the drive. I lost the bucket of information. Breach is direct attack on the private data by an unauthorized entity. While data loss also can be handled by a miscreant, but your data exposure is more towards the privacy breach. Okay, the privacy breach of the data. That is the difference. It's a very thin line difference, and it's a very good question. Data leak, you can think from a vulnerability perspective also. This is a vulnerability got exposed, data loss happened. But breach talks more towards the exposure of privacy data or the PII information. Okay, so data breach still remains one because of that reason.
Okay, thank you, madam. One more question. In insufficient due diligence, what is the risk related to that thing, madam?
So let's say we built up a business, which I said, let's say we take a simple project. We all wanted to study
you say
on
it is
something.
auditor point of view about the cloud services. What's the risk associated with that diligence?
Sure. So let's say we have a system. We got the data. So what exactly you should understand from the, if you don't do due diligence. Okay, let me take an example. Every year we should do a medical test. It is recommended by doctors that annual health checkup is mandatory. So what is due diligence? We should do it. We should actually go and take, we can do the test. We should know that, right? That is the due diligence doctor gives you. You go and implement it every year, then you are safe. But I decide that, okay, whatever medicines are given to me, that is fine. Now I'm not going to check whatever is happening to me. Am I being due diligent enough? So when I take a cloud service, I host my client data. If I don't take due diligence to understand what threats can happen, what risks can happen, what information can be lost, then how will I know what impact I will incur? If I know that there is a problem, then only I will address it. So due diligence, think from the perspective of an independent view. I gave an example of an auditor because generally internal auditors or external auditors are the folks who review your systems independently and tell you whether there is a gap or not. They do the due diligence. They tell you this is where the problem is. But you also can do your due diligence by understanding what problems you might have in the system, and that is where it will show you the risk and the impact. So due diligence is being aware of your own processes, about your own information, so you can make it better.
Okay, thank you, madam. Final question. At the last, you explained about the Amazon S3 and earlier at Microsoft is a blob. Both
Mhm.
same data type or different data type,
No,
madam,
no.
for
Actually,
storing the
these are
object?
yeah. Actually, it is the same. They both store objects. They both store files, photographs. These are two different cloud service providers. So they have given different names to the same service line. So while Amazon calls it as object store, they call it as S3, simple storage service. You will find Azure calling it as blob storage. That is the only difference. But both store objects only. Since they are two different providers, they call it in different name. If you just browse Google and Oracle, they will call in their own terminology.
Thank you, madam. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Few minutes,
Thank you
madam.
all for being so patient.
Uh,
And thanks for allowing me to talk.
few minutes, madam. HOD want to suggest some information. Ela question over.
Soma madam, thank you so much for accepting our request and being with us for the last 1.5 hours.
Thanks, ma'am.
Most probably Anandan sir might have given a entire presentation summary about US, and participants also has shared their views with us. Really, we are grateful to you and thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. Actually, I want to say thanks to you. If you would not have invited, you would not have suggested, I would not have got this chance. And I want to really say, because students are also listening, please be very respectful and listen to your teachers. If teachers are not there, we are not there.
Thank you, and